Hi, my name is Maggie Price, and today I would like to speak to you about effective leadership and management. The case study I chose to present is Air Force Supply Squadron. This is an interesting case study because it illustrates how one person encountered a bad situation and through effective leadership turned a squadron around to become a group based in positivity. Whether the situation is real or not, this case was more interesting to me because my father was a part of the Korean War, and this squadron in this scenario also served during the Korean War. I'd like to begin by giving you a brief background on the case. Colonel Pete Novak was assigned to command an Air Force squadron that airlifted supplies to combat units during the Korean War. The squadron consisted of more than 200 men, and this squadron was in dire straits when Colonel Novak assumed command. The squadron was facing supply and personnel shortages. They were in a state of disorganization, and there was little teamwork or cooperation by the squadron members. The squadron's workload was overwhelming. There was constant bickering and disagreements, and their morale was low. It appears that Colonel Novak recognized the problem within the squadron and immediately set about turning the unit around. His strategies included meeting with all of the men and communicating the importance of their work and their work's impact on the support of the war effort. He ensured that the men knew that the supplies and ammunition that they delivered to those at the front line were critical in keeping the enemy from taking over the country. Colonel Novak further validated each man and the importance of his contribution to the squadron's operation and success. Colonel Novak didn't stop there. He worked to get to know each member of the squadron and spent time with them both at work and when they were off duty. He met frequently with officers and select NCOs to discuss plans for missions. Through those meetings, clear goals were established. When Colonel Novak spent time with the enlisted men, he listened to them and he responded to their concerns. He worked diligently to help improve living conditions on the base, and he worked also to resolve conflicts and disagreements among the men. He took the time to know his men and to learn their individual skills. Colonel Novak was a hands-on leader. He reorganized the entire unit by establishing clear goals and clear delegation of authority. He ensured that the supervisors, the NCOs, were held responsible for the actions of their men, and he, within limits, supported their decisions. Colonel Novak's actions were transparent. Responsibilities were assigned when everyone who was affected or who was concerned were present. He listened and worked through disagreements. He was there for the men and basically an open door policy. But more importantly, Colonel Novak worked beside his men. When situations were tough, he was right there with them, working to solve problems and to complete duties. The impact Colonel Novak had on the squadron was massive. As a result of his actions, all squadron members learned and understood what was expected of them. Self-value, self-efficacy, and self-pride were experienced as the men realized the importance of their individual role in the success of the war effort. The squadron's work became more efficient, teamwork improved, and as a result, morale improved. A review of Colonel Novak's actions reveals his exceptional leadership and management skills. Colonel Novak offered supportive communication to every man in the squadron. His verbal and nonverbal communication offered congruency. He was sincere and honest, and his communication matched his thinking. The colonel validated each man in the squadron. He spent time with officers and enlisted men both and with them when they were on and off duty, and he continuously reminded them of their worth to the squadron and to the war effort. He listened to the men when they had concerns and disagreements, and he responded effectively. The colonel's power and influence was a result of his expertise, personal attraction, effort, and legitimacy. He was an experienced member of the armed forces and had worked his way up to his ranking of colonel. His charisma was attractive to others. He was sociable and likable and spent time with squadron members. His efforts included working to create squadron organization and to assist men if problems arose. His legitimacy was evident in his work to improve the squadron so that they would make a valuable contribution to the war effort, and he made sure that every man in the squadron knew what he stood for, that is, Colonel Novak, and that he believed in the work of the squadron. Colonel Novak was a great motivator. He established clear expectations. He organized and redesigned the squadron and ensured that the personal needs of the men were met. He worked to remove obstacles that stood in the path of squadron success, and he got to know the men and worked to improve both their working and their personal lives, helping to satisfy their salient needs. When conflicts arose, the colonel responded by listening and coaching. He worked collaboratively with the parties to develop resolutions. He made sure the designation of authority was clear, and he supported his leaders in their decisions. However, he did hold those same leaders accountable for the actions of their men. Therefore, he empowered them through his conflict resolution skills. The men in the squadron were empowered by Colonel Novak's skills. He ensured autonomy and self-efficacy by establishing clear goals and then by fostering personal mastery. He modeled leadership and work ethics as he worked beside his squadron members. He provided emotional support through his efforts to get to know each man and each man's strengths, skills, and concerns. The colonel made sure that information was provided to men when they were involved in a decision or in a delegation of responsibility. He made sure that shortages were corrected and resources were available to the men as they needed them. He stated and worked to connect the squadron's work to the outcome of the war effort. He said what he believed in and stood for what he believed in. As a result, confidence was created among every man in the squadron. When Colonel Novak first assumed the squadron leadership role, teamwork was nearly non-existent. He built a culture of teamwork, and the men traveled through every stage of team building. Forming occurred through reorganization, delegation of duties, and gaining familiarity with the men. Norming naturally followed as the colonel set expectations and goals and reminded the men of their role in meeting those goals. Some storming occurred as the men worked together, and as they did, disagreements did erupt. However, Colonel Novak stepped in to assist in resolution and worked beside the men to ensure that they did not stray from the mission goals. Performing occurred when the squadron united and became a cohesive group, working together to support the war effort through their individual and group or their team efforts. All of Colonel Novak's efforts appear to lead to positive change. His work to reorganize the squadron, to ensure that the men knew who they were and what their roles were, both individually and as a team, increased their readiness to work together. He articulated his vision for the team by communicating their importance to the war effort, thereby generating their commitment, and then he institutionalized the change through his and the squadron's efforts. Colonel Pete Novak's efforts and effective leadership impacted each of the 200 men who made up the squadron. Morale improved, the squadron became efficient in their skills and their work. The men experienced self-efficacy and worked together as a team, and together as that team, they did make a meaningful contribution to the war effort. In the end, the squadron became one of the most efficient in Korea. Thank you.